Hello, my name's Julie Williams. I'm a registered migration agent with Migration Downunder, and I'm here today to give you an update, or the COVID-19 pandemic update. Thankfully, as restrictions are being eased, not only in Australia but around the world, we're seeing a little bit of a relaxation and the economy coming back together to life again, and people starting to move slowly around, not necessarily overseas, but businesses and people are sort of opening up and starting to operate again, which is a good sign for visas and how it could affect you, whether you're offshore or currently onshore. Now, there's been obviously flights are still very restricted. People's visas are expiring, and there's a lot of concern over that. Look, there is ability to be able to lodge a further visa application, even if it's a visitor visa. If you're on a visitor visa and you can't travel overseas, there's plenty of options out there to allow you to remain lawful in Australia until the flights resume and border restrictions are lifted. That being said, a lot of people who are either offshore on a temporary visa, or perhaps a family member of an Australian, or then again it might be an Australian citizen or permanent resident wanting to depart Australia. We're getting a lot of questions in regards to, can I travel? Basically the answer is no. As an Australian citizen or permanent resident, you can't travel offshore unless you've got a really compassionate, compelling circumstance. It's in the interest of the national, it's in the national interest for you to travel, or you're going over there to help and assist with the current pandemic, whether that be research or medical. So you have to have fairly good reasons, and there are a lot of requests, and whilst there's a lot of approvals, there's a lot of refusals as well. And I think it's only getting tougher as restrictions to our international borders lengthen. There's more frustration of people wanting to be able to travel freely. And that also goes with those that are currently offshore wanting to return, perhaps reunite with a loved one. Unless you are living here in Australia on a permanent basis, or you are living together with your Australian partner offshore, it is going to be very difficult to seek an exemption to travel here. If you've lodged your own application and you're wanting to know about processing, look, we can't really help you about that. You've done that, you've got to follow that up. But what we can say is offshore applications are not really actively being processed at the moment, because you have no ability, once the visa is granted, to enter Australia. The same goes with people applying for an ETA or a visitor visa. The online system doesn't actually allow it, because the government has closed that down to stop people applying for visas that they can't actually issue and enter in on at the moment. There's a few people who are looking at perhaps they're onshore, offshore, going to the next step with their permanent residency, or perhaps an employer-sponsored visa require English language. The good news is that English language centres are starting to reopen, not only in Australia but around the world. PTE Pearson's, or PTE Academic, is one that has commenced reopening. Also biometrics. I think a lot of people are pending biometric results. Now that is still slow depending on where you are, because VFS Global undertake that, and if you look at VFS Global website, they'll be able to tell you whether your centre is opened or closed. A lot of them still remain closed or very limited operations at the moment. The other thing in regards to COVID-19, maybe you've got a parent here, maybe they're on a visitor visa and you've sponsored them for a temporary 870 visa. Now, generally speaking, you have to be offshore at the time that the 870 is applied or lodged. But we understand a lot of parents perhaps have come in on a visitor visa waiting for the sponsorship to be approved, and now it has and can't depart. Well, the government are being very lenient in regards to 870 applications and are accepting them as an onshore application. So that's good news for those that are seeking to lodge that 870. Your parents don't have to depart, but do be aware the sponsorship has to be approved prior to that. Other than that, I think that's about it for Processing times you're probably inquiring about. That has generally slowed down across the board. Offshore temporary visas are just not actively being processed. Partner visas are still being processed. They might be a little slow, but they are. 801s especially coming through quickly. 820s onshore are definitely being processed and finalised. Other applications, parents who are onshore, they're also being finalised and requested for their second back fees. Employer-sponsored permanent residency still processing. 482, very stagnant, very slow, and we really can't advise on how much that's going to improve. Obviously, there's a lot of political sensitivities around the employer-sponsored skilled visa program, and whilst there's a number of high unemployment, whilst that may not match with the skill set that Australia is seeking, that is a reason why that has slowed down. So look, it can only go upwards and continue to improve as I guess the pandemic slows, the number of cases slow down, the restrictions are getting lifted, and then the economy starts getting moving, and hopefully borders won't be too far away. But there's still a long way off yet. So stay positive, stay safe, and we'll keep you updated.